What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Upper Hand Fantasy Podcast. This is Faraz Siddiqui. We are going to go over everything that happened in Week 9 on Sunday. A lot going on. Justin Fields, oh my goodness, exploding! Wow, what a performance! We basically saw the best rushing performance ever by a quarterback in history.
Yeah, essentially. I mean, there's amazing. That one. They said that Colin Kaepernick ran for 181 in the playoffs, but I don't really count playoffs because that's not fantasy football. The best fantasy football performance on the ground by a quarterback comes via Justin Fields this week. And after tearing up two good defenses in the Patriots and the Cowboys, if this is what he's doing to the Dolphins defense, which isn't that bad, they just got Bradley Chubb. What's he going to do next week to the Lions?
You got to win Lions next week. I didn't even see that. Is he?
Mm-hmm.
Oh boy. All right. It's going to be bad. Hope everyone's doing well on this Monday. Let's go into everything that happened in Week 9 just to kind of get you ready for Week 10. First things first, Frank Reich, head coach of the Indianapolis Colts, just got fired.
Yep.
He's done. Jim Irsay just tweeted that Frank Reich is done with the team. The 3-5, not where they wanted to be. Seem like, they want to kind of turn things around. I guess after what the Colts offense has shown, these past couple of weeks, it hasn't been great. And it's possible that the Colts might end up going back to Matt Ryan. I can totally see that happening. Sam Ehlinger, has not looked good, right? Especially yesterday on Sunday. He did not look good at all. Seemed lost out there. So I can totally see, the next head coach saying, all right, let's bring back in Matt Ryan. You can't tell me that Sam Ehlinger gives you a bebetter chance than Matt Ryan. You know what I'm saying? It just hasn't looked good. The experiment was, went wrong. Frank Reich, he was probably like, no, it's either Sam Ehlinger stays at quarterback or just fire me. And they said, okay, we will fire you.
Yeah.
I think Frank Reich is a good offensive coach, overall. I think he'll find his way. I think he'll get another job. Is he allowed to work this season? Is that possible? Can another team just pick him up and say hey, can you be our offensive coordinator?
I don't know.
What about the Steelers?
The Steelers
maybe
the
Steelers could use some offensive coaching help.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's going to be interesting to see where he ends up landing. I would assume he's might take a vacation for the rest of this season and then come back next season as a pretty good offensive coach. But he did handpick a couple quarterbacks over the last couple of seasons. Didn't really work out so well for him. But we'll see how they do moving forward. But Deon Jackson, he was the guy for them, right? 80% of snaps, before he ended up leaving the game in the third quarter. He ended up with a knee injury, right? He left the game. Jordan Wilkins was the next man up. You never know. Zach Moss could make his debut next week if Jackson can't go. It seems like he had a hyperextended knee. That's what the initial thoughts are. And if that's the case, then most likely he'll be back next week. But we'll see. Jonathan Taylor on deck. It's possible that he ends up playing next week, but we'll see how that works out. And this entire offense, is going to be interesting to see what kind of changes the next coach makes. There's no word on who's got that guy going to be yet. Maybe there is. I haven't checked yet. But in terms of who the guys are, I would want to just keep Paris Campbell on my bench if I'm not starting him. Right, obviously, hold on to Michael Pittman. Obviously, you kind of want to see what Alec Pierce can do. There's some talented pieces on this offense that could potentially get better. If the philosophy changes, if they use guys different ways. The offensive line hasn't been great, but can you do something from a coaching perspective that could mitigate that? Right, there are a few things that can happen with a head coaching change.
Yeah, and with Deon Jackson, just to hit on his injury quick, if you watch the game, it looked exactly like a hyperextended knee. It's not like one that you got to think about it and maybe it's could be this, that, the other. He was warming it up. He was trying to, keep it warm and looked like he's going to try and get back into the game. So it doesn't look like it's going to be something that's long-term. But I kind of feel bad for Frank Reich because he's kind of dealing with, the injury bug right now, especially at running back. And then obviously Matt Ryan didn't work out for them. You turn to a rookie quarterback. At that point, it's the circumstances are so bad. It's I don't think Frank Reich is going to be upset I think he understands what's gone on this season isn't all necessarily his fault. But as we've said with coaching changes, sometimes they light a fire under a team's ass. Like we saw that with the Panthers, and they had 2 really good weeks of fantasy production out of nowhere, and they've obviously come back down to earth. We'll get into that later. But this could help. If Jonathan Taylor could come back and get healthy, and maybe, like you said, they turn back to Matt Ryan, I think at this point it's looking like he gives them a better chance to win, even though, he was turning it over a lot. Sam Ellinger, at least he looked lost. At least Matt Ryan looked like an NFL quarterback in those games. Yeah. It's just a bad situation for him. If they go back to Matt Ryan and Jonathan Taylor gets healthy, I think we could start to see this offense kind of come back together. But right now, it wasn't looking good. What we kind of figured was going to happen did happen. Bill Belichick's defense just ate a young quarterback alive, Matt Judon. Shout out to him. He's just a monster with those red sleeves coming up the edge. You know where he's coming from every single play, and they still can't cover him. It was just a rough showing, and it ended up with Frank Reich being fired. I wasn't necessarily anticipating that, but, it kind of makes sense the way the season's going. I don't think you have anything to worry about with Deon Jackson. I think he should be good to go next week. I'm not a doctor, but if Jonathan Taylor comes back, obviously you're starting him.
Dr. Rizzuto with the goods. Appreciate it, man. Cordarrelle Patterson, we're moving on to Atlanta real quick. He came back. He had 2 touchdowns in this game. It was a 3-man timeshare for the most part in his first game back. Both Patterson and Algier pretty much split snaps down the middle. 38% of snaps each. The rest of the snaps were played by Caleb Huntley and a little bit of Avery Williams. And I think next week it's possible that we see Patterson start to take a larger role, right? But Algier did look good, right? He had that big run, and it's possible that both he and Patterson start to make this more of a 2-man backfield. I can totally see that happening. I think both are going to be fantasy viable just because, this is a run-first offense. That's how they want to beat teams. And, Patterson, he did get all the goal line snaps over Algier in this game. So that's good for Patterson's value. On top of that, I think his snap share is only going to go up, right? He's not going to see 38% of snaps. So I can see this being at least 50 to 60% of snaps for Cordarrelle Patterson next week. And, he's going to be a pretty good fantasy asset. You're going to have to rank him, in the top 24 running backs at the very least.
I think easily top 24 for Cordarrelle Patterson, especially if, like we said, his touches go up. Tyler Algier looks pretty good too. I think that this is going to settle into a 1-2 punch between Algier and Cordarrelle Patterson, with Cordarrelle Patterson having the edge, especially, like you said, his volume goes up because he scored 2 touchdowns on relatively limited carries, 13 carries to Tyler Algier's 10. I think Algier has done enough at this point that he's kind of cemented himself as a nice piece in this backfield that he's not going to be, losing out on time that much, even though Cordarrelle Patterson is healthy, or he's going to be healthy. I think even if he wasn't 100% this week, he looked really good anyway. So obviously he's explosive. And Caleb Huntley and Avery Williams, they spelled him, and they were all right. And we talked about Damian Williams maybe being part of this backfield. I don't really see that coming into play at this point, the way that the rest of these running backs have played. Cordarrelle Patterson, obviously you're starting him as an RB2. You might be able to get away with Tyler Algier as a flex in certain games. I'm not sure if he's going to be as reliable as he's been with Cordarrelle Patterson banged up, but he has upside. I mean, he's shown that he's an explosive ball carrier, 10 for 99. That's pretty good. And he had that one explosive run. He ran, I think it was like a 40-yard. Was it a run or a catch? I don't know. He took a run or a catch early in the game, and he went long distance.
I think it was a run. I'm pretty sure it was a run. Yeah.
So it was runs. But the point is, he looked good. He passes the eye test. He's not exactly Travis Etienne, but he's definitely explosive, and he deserves time on the field. So I think if 2 running backs are going to come out of this backfield, it's going to be Cordarrelle Patterson and Tyler Algier. Algier won't be as reliable, but he'll have week-to-week flex appeal.
Yeah. No, I 100% agree. All right, let's see what else is going on here. Garrett Wilson, 2 straight big games now, right? He caught 8 of 9 targets for 92 yards, 36% target share in this game. The Jets are going to be on a bye, right? So Corey Davis has a chance of coming back in week 11. That can potentially have an effect on Garrett Wilson's target share because Corey Davis, like Zach Wilson, was looking for Corey Davis, earlier on in the season before he got hurt. If you're wondering, Elijah Moore played half the snaps that Garrett Wilson did in this game. It seems like he's still in the doghouse. Denzel Mims is playing over Elijah Moore as a starting wide receiver. So that tells you what you need to know there. So I wouldn't bank on Elijah Moore making any sort of impact this season. At this point, like we kind of figured that earlier, but now the fact that he's still not getting snaps, still not getting targets, that's not good for him. But Garrett Wilson, like he can make a late season run here. Even when Corey Davis is back, I wouldn't sleep on him because he's obviously, he's a top 10 pick in this draft, very talented, right? Play with Chris Olave at Ohio State. Both these guys, should be top end wide receivers in the NFL, and they've already showed their potential. So don't sleep on Garrett Wilson as a potential fantasy starter for you once they're back from bye.
I think it's 100% fair. Before I get into Elijah Moore, I just want to say congratulations to your Jets for beating the Bills. Like, I didn't see that coming. If I was betting, I would have lost so many yesterday. You know what I'm saying?
Dude,
the Jets look really good.
The Jets are 6-3. I was talking to a buddy of mine. We talked about this. This is like the Mark Sanchez Rex days when the offense stunk, but the defense were carrying you, and the offense made the plays when they needed to, right? That's kind of how the Jets have been winning these games, and a lot of close games. The Jets have been winning some really close games, which is another testament to the head coaches, right? To all the coaching staff. Like, that's what you want. You want to win these close games, and against the Bills are 0-2 against the division right now, right?
Yeah,
they have they're half game ahead of the Jets, in the division standings, and the Jets are 2-1, I think, in the division, or 2-0 in the division, something like that.
Yeah.
So it's not going to take much. And then on top of that, you look at Josh Allen real quick to get into that. He has an elbow injury apparently, and he said after the game that he was in pain, something that he's going to have to deal with. So I'm really curious to see what this elbow injury is and if it's going to affect those deep passes. And it might, right? So like that's something to kind of keep an eye on, not only if you're a Bills fan, but if you have Josh Allen or a guy like Gabriel Davis, in your lineup, like, is he going to be able to, hit those bombs deep, right?
Yeah.
And I would hope so. I think he'll be fine. But again, like I'll call myself Dr. Siddiqui here and there, but I don't really know what kind of effect this is going to have on Josh Allen for the rest of the season. So just something to keep an eye on. But yeah, dude, the Jets, man, 6-3. This is pretty exciting, right? Because this is the best start that they've had in 12 years.
Yeah.
So Robert Saleh, all of it's coming together right now. Like we had, a pretty good confidence in our GM, right? In JD. Joe Douglas, and now that the pieces that they've been putting together, and then the depth on top of it, right? Like Breece Hall, he's gone, but listen, like we have some guys who can we're not going to be anywhere close to what we were doing with Breece Hall, but Michael Carter, James Robinson, these guys will hold the fort at least, and then we lost Elijah Vera Tucker, but our depth on the offensive line too, right? Is they're going to do some things as well. So like, really, really good job putting the team together, and the Robert Saleh taking it to where we need to go. Right.
Yeah. And then also,
go ahead.
Sauce Gardner looks really good. I will say that. He looks really good. But
it's funny, the whole week, right? Like we were talking about the matchup between Stephon Diggs and Sauce, and he got, Stephon Diggs caught the best of him very early on in that game where he kind of beat him. And Sauce seemed nervous on that play because he did something like uncharacteristic where like he thought he was going to jam him up. Stephon Diggs ran right by him and caught that big play. But outside of that, he held it down pretty well. He got that key pick late in that game, and
right.
Sauce is going to be a good player in this league, man.
Yeah, absolutely. And then finally, to hit back on Elijah Moore, what we were saying before. Yeah. If you watch, and I'm sure you're watching a game, but if you watch a game, I saw him run this weird ass motion, running like circles around Zach Wilson at least 4 times. Like they're using him to try and throw the defense off, and that's it. And they know the ball is not going to him. It's just a wonder why he's on the field. I think it's hilarious. I thought it was funny just seeing it because, like, what is he doing at this point? He's wasting his time. We talked about, him requesting a trade, and he's not going to be able to have a good contract he would have had if he's, producing, this season. It just looks ridiculous. It made me laugh a little bit, not so much because I'm laughing at him. I'm just wondering, like, man, he really is just stuck doing nothing. You know what I'm saying?
Right. It's interesting, man. And listen, they got the win, against the Buffalo Bills, and that was without Elijah Moore getting a target. So the Jets are doing what they want at this point. And if a guy's going to complain, I guess that, they're kind of putting their foot down and saying like, hey, like, listen, like you haven't been producing. So you're going to complain on top of that. This is what's
Yeah.
going to happen. I get it. I get it from a leadership perspective, from a coaching perspective. I get it. I totally get it. Even though I'm a big fan of Elijah Moore, as a player. So it is what it is. Hopefully, we can get that situation right, and Elijah Moore, can get to a point where he's very productive in the league.
Yeah.
But I want to talk about the split real quick. Just wanted to mention it. Between Michael Carter and James Robinson, they basically split snaps down the middle in this game. Carter, had the slight edge in snaps, but he also looked better and he had more production. And Michael Carter did get a red zone touchdown in this game, but James Robinson got the one goal line snap, so that's worth noting. He did catch a touchdown as well. Kind of like a little screen and got the ball in the end zone after that Sauce Gardner pick. But just kind of worth noting on that split. I don't know how fantasy relevant these guys are going to be moving forward, but as of right now, like I'm okay starting Michael Carter, right, as a upside flex play. If at best right now, low end RB2, like he was a low end RB2 for me this week, just because there was so many teams on bye and that like there's just so many running backs missing in the rankings.
Yeah.
But outside of that, he's probably an RB3 play, and so is James Robinson, not too far behind him.
Yeah, I think that's fair. James Robinson, he did have that receiving touchdown that kind of saved his day.
Exactly.
Otherwise, it looks like Michael Carter is going to get most of the touches. James Robinson isn't really startable for me unless anything would happen to Michael Carter or some drastic shift happens, but I'm not expecting that to happen because they found a winning formula and they're going to stick to it.
Nyheim Hines, he hardly played in his game against the Jets, and Devin Singletary, continues to dominate snaps, and I'd assume that Hines will be a much bigger part of this offense in their next game. Obviously, I guess TJ Hockenson was the only one to get a shit ton of snaps this week, depending on based on like all these guys getting moved. But as far as Nyheim Hines goes, just keep him on your bench for now. Like I'm not starting him next week either. I'll just wait until he sees like 50% of snaps or something before I start him. Will that happen this season? Who knows? We have no idea. We're just projecting, and I would assume that he does because they made that trade midseason and they want to get him involved. And he's a very good pass catcher. So I'd assume that happened a little bit later.
Yeah, no panic for me. It's not like Devin Singletary did anything to, shove Nyheim Hines down the depth chart and be like, no, this is my backfield. 8 carries for 24 yards. He caught 4 passes for 24 yards. It's just like, it was all right. He did his job. I think that Nyheim Hines could do a lot more with that, especially the receiving work. So I'm not worried about him at all. Don't sit there and think, oh, well, now I'm screwed. I picked him up. I was thinking I was going to have a good running back here. If you started him this week, maybe that's a different scenario. But
that's on you.
Yeah,
that's on you.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you picked him up, he should have been on your bench. I don't have any problem letting him on my bench this week or even the week after. We'll see. I think he should become a bigger part of the offense. Like you said,
this is more of a late season run type of play.
Yeah, they don't trade for a guy to have him sit on the bench the whole time.
No. Both Jeff Wilson and Raheem Mostert split carries down the middle with 9 carries each. They split goal line snaps with 1 each, and Jeff Wilson was the one who played better in this game. And I can totally see Jeff Wilson being the 1A next week. I wouldn't be surprised, to be honest with you. I saw a stat today that Underdog just posted on Twitter, and it was basically it was rushing yards over expectation, and who was the worst. Who would you guess is near the top of that list? Like, forget about these running backs for a second. If you had to assume, out of all the running backs in the league, who was the worst in rushing yards over expectation?
Worst in rushing yards over expectation. Najee Harris.
Yep. Good job.
Nice.
He was I think he was first or second, right? So it was a couple though, and who else was on the list? And we'll get into it.
On the low end?
Leonard Fournette.
Oh,
he was on there.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
Raheem Mostert, he was on there as well.
Mm-hmm.
He was like top 5 or 6 or something like that. And I feel like I gotta pull the tweet up now at this point. I'm like talking about it. Like I was like, who else? Who else was on it? And I'm gonna I'll pull it up for you guys right now. But this is a situation to kind of monitor because you were starting Raheem Mostert, as in every week RB2, and at this point, I'm not sure if he's going to be that. Okay. So lowest rushing yards over expectation per attempt. This is per Next Gen Stats, tweeted by Underdog NFL. Cam Akers was number 1 as the worst.
Yeah.
Najee Harris was number 2. Melvin Gordon was number 3. Leonard Fournette was number 4. Clyde Edwards-Helaire was number 5. Raheem Mostert is number 6. That's just, those are the guys there. Just want to say that. So, and the reason why I bring that up is because Jeff Wilson has been playing well all season. In his first game with Miami, 50-50 split, and he ended up outplaying Raheem Mostert. Okay, so Jeff Wilson is somebody that you might be playing him as an RB2 moving forward. And even next week, I'm actually okay playing Jeff Wilson as like a low-end RB2 flex play. I would. You know?
Yeah, and we talked about it last week too. You know, we talked about, is the sell window closed on Raheem Mostert? Yeah. You know, maybe before this game it was open a little bit. We talked about that, but you're not going to be able to get rid of Raheem Mostert now. You're kind of just stuck. Jeff Wilson looked really good. It looked like he was thriving in the role that they envisioned Chase Edmonds to be playing. You know, he was catching a pass. He's catching passes. He was good on the ground, just doing what he needed to do. Even though, like we said, it's a big day. It was another big day for Tua in the passing game. You know, Jeff Wilson was able to get it done with that touchdown. I think that he's the guy to have. Raheem Mostert, you know, we talked about it. He was on pace to, you know, set the career highs that he had in touches, and he's 31. It's not injury this time that's keeping him back, but Jeff Wilson just looks more dynamic and like a better all-around back already in this offense than Raheem Mostert did. And that's it's not shade at Raheem Mostert. It's just Jeff Wilson. I think he's a little bit younger, you know, and he just looked better yesterday. I wouldn't be surprised. They brought him in, a familiar face. I wasn't surprised to see him get some work, but the way that was split already, you know, it's pretty encouraging for Jeff Wilson moving forward.
Mostert did get most of the receiving work and the receiving snaps in this game, the 2-minute offense, that sort of thing. So, you know, something to keep in mind that he'll still be involved, but, you know, we might see the 1A shift a little bit towards Jeff Wilson Jr. moving forward, but we'll see. That's just speculation for now because they did split evenly this week. One backfield I thought was going to shift a lot further than, well, they didn't shift at all. David Montgomery led the Bears backfield in this game. Not the trajectory I thought that was going in. Right, Montgomery was on the field for 70% of snaps and proceeded to take 14 carries for 36 yards. And Khalil Herbert only had 7 carries. So kind of disappointed considering how good Herbert has looked lately.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to, you know, it's easy to jump on the Justin Fields bandwagon and be like, well, with Justin Fields playing so well, you know, how is anybody else going to produce? I think they'll be able to produce better than they did yesterday. Obviously, Justin Fields, we're thinking that's going to be an anomaly of a performance, but it looked really good. You know, regardless, Justin Fields is playing a lot better. I think the whole Bears backfield kind of gets a bump down because Justin Fields is playing so well. You know, now the passing game it's not alive, but it's much more efficient and much more passable where teams have to respect it at this point. And now they're getting to a slightly more balanced offense where it was very, very run heavy at the beginning of the season. And that's how Dave Montgomery and Khalil Herbert made their money, you know, and how they scored their points. They just got the touches and the volume, and they were both good for 10, 15 points a week. At this point, if Justin Fields is going to be playing like this, and he's going to be as dynamic as he was yesterday, especially, you know, in a good matchup next week, I'm not sure how much either of these running backs are going to get used. I think it could go either way. I think it's still a hot hand approach, but it wasn't necessary for them yesterday because they're in a negative game script for most of the game. They're playing from behind, I think, the whole time. But Justin Fields is keeping them in it.
Yeah, and you know, David Montgomery is going to be the guy, right? Like when they're playing from behind, when he has to pass protect, that sort of thing, like he's going to be the guy in the field. So that makes sense. But you want to get you want to get your guy as much touches as possible. The guy who's going to be able to create big plays for you. That's Khalil Herbert. Montgomery has had his fair share of big plays this year, but you got to get Herbert more involved. You know, the Bears offense, you know, Justin Fields was able to do his thing. He single-handedly, you know, was the entire Bears offense, right?
Yeah.
This on Sunday. So that's great. But, you know, 70% of snaps for David Montgomery, a little higher than I thought it would be, personally.
Would it be a disservice to David Montgomery to kind of compare the situation to Ezekiel Elliott and Tony Pollard? Or maybe, you know, maybe drag down on maybe we're dragging down on Tony Pollard a little bit, but go ahead.
I don't think so. I think David Montgomery is a good running back.
Yeah.
I do. I don't think that this is a situation where I think David Montgomery is a bad running back. He sucks, blah, blah, blah. You know, like if I'm talking about Zeke and Pollard, I think there is a clear situation there where Tony Pollard is a better running back right now. Right.
All right.
When it comes to Montgomery and Khalil Herbert, I'm sorry. When it comes to these two guys, I feel like the talent is a lot closer, but I don't think it's like a 70-30 type of thing, right? It should be either 50-50, or I do think that the guy who has been creating more bigger plays for you, like Khalil Herbert, should get a little bit more touches, right? That's kind of how I feel. And like you leave David Montgomery in there for pass protecting and get his touches too. But I just think that Khalil Herbert should get more touches here. But I do think David Montgomery is a good running back. It just so happens that they have a running back who has been more explosive than him this year.
Yeah.
If Montgomery was had a 3-down roll, like he'll be very effective. Like we saw that in the past. Like he's had big games in the past, So I'm not putting him on the Najee Harris, Ezekiel Elliott, that sort of train at all. Like I think he's a better player than those guys right now.
Right, that's true.
Bears wide receiver Chase Claypool made his debut this week. Darnell Mooney, he ended up producing on more opportunities in this game due to the fact that the Bears dropped back a ton more than usual. And I think that's what we should expect with them. Acquiring Claypool, we talked about that, right? Like Claypool, he only ran a route on 41% of dropbacks, but he was targeted on 38% of his routes. And that makes him very interesting moving forward. A lot more interesting than I thought he would be in this offense. And you consider how Justin Fields looked yesterday, right?
Yeah.
3 passing touchdowns, 15 carries for 178 yards, and another touchdown on the ground. Justin Fields balling out, man. Like, it's great to see. And now he is a high-end fantasy quarterback. Just like that.
I think that's what he is at this point. And we talked about him having that upside, that kind of upside. And, it didn't look good the first few weeks. But suddenly the offense, and I've just seen the shift in the play calling and the decision-making. Everything is a perfect storm. It came together. And Justin Fields looks like what we want him to be. He looks like he's back at Ohio State, but with like more rushing upside. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Obviously not throwing it as much, but, the way that he's running, I saw a stat. I think PFF posted it. It was 8 runs of 10+ yards yesterday, which was the most in a game, I think, in the PFF era, they said, which is just ridiculous. Was it by a quarterback? It might have been. I'm not sure. We'll see. But regardless, it was just ridiculous. Every time he took off with the ball running, it was a huge gain. And then that 61-yard touchdown, even if you take away that 61-yard touchdown, you could say, oh, well, that's an anomaly. That's not going to happen every week. So you take away those 12 points, he's still a 30-point performance. I think that's still the QB1 this week, right? Like, it's just ridiculous what Justin Fields is able to do.
But now if you look at the numbers since week 5, Justin Fields is the overall QB1 since week 5. Yeah. That accounts for 6 weeks, the last 6 weeks. So Justin, he's in a situation where, like, if you put him on your bench, now you have a lot of leverage, because in a 1 quarterback league, whoever your other quarterback was, Joe Burrow, I don't know, like Geno Smith, Justin Herbert, trade those guys away now. Don't hold 2 quarterbacks. This is your opportunity before your fantasy trade deadline to trade one of your other quarterbacks away, the one you've been starting all year, Dak Prescott, all these guys, trade them away, get a running back or wide receiver back, or create some sort of package to do that, and just ride Justin Fields season. That's the move.
All right, yeah, I got a question. Would you rather start Kyler Murray or Justin Fields? Would you lump Kyler Murray in with those guys like Justin Herbert and Dak Prescott?
Yeah, I think I would. Like, if I'm like, for example, if I have Justin Fields and Kyler Murray right now, I'm fine trading away Kyler Murray to keep Justin Fields as my QB1. Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
The guys I would not do that for right now is Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, and Jalen Hurts.
I think that's fair. I mean, at this point,
am I missing somebody like we did last? Or those? Okay. How about Lamar? Okay, let's talk about Lamar for a second.
Yeah. Okay.
Lamar, we're going to see tonight, right? Lamar's not going to have his weapons. He's not going to have Bateman. He's not going to have Andrews. He'll have Likely, so that's good, right? That kind of a little bit. It makes up for like 80% of Mark Andrews, I would say. Well, that might be a little bit too much. Likely doesn't have a huge sample size, so like maybe I should calm down a little bit.
Yeah, but they have rapport. You can give them that. They have rapport.
They have rapport. Now, if you have Lamar, name value, obviously he can have his own 40-point game, right?
Yeah.
At times. Are you okay trading Lamar away to get a package and just Justin Fields all year?
Me personally, I don't know if I would do that to Lamar. We
really, I was expecting you as the Justin Fields truther on this podcast.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
No, I love Justin Fields. Don't get me wrong. But Lamar Jackson, we saw him have his own 40-point game already. Two games, 39. It was a 39-point game and a 40-point game. We saw him do his thing. He still can do it. He had a couple quiet weeks, but last week he came back. He looked better in that second half that they played against the Buccaneers, and they've been off the field a while. It's easy to get caught up in this recency bias, but I think that Lamar Jackson is going to be just fine. The upside, I think, is still it's equal. We've seen. I don't want to say that Justin Fields is Lamar Jackson, but in terms of fantasy production, their ceilings are very similar at this point because Justin Fields now, they're unleashing him in the run game. I think they're equal. You can just take your pick between them. I think Lamar Jackson is going to be able to do his thing just like he's always been able to, as long as he's healthy. He hasn't been banged up this year at all, which is good. So you can take your pick. If you had to pick between them, I'm not sure who you'd take. I'm sticking with Lamar at this point. And maybe that's just me being conservative, but I think Justin Fields is already, at this point, he's going to end up being a top 5 quarterback moving forward unless anything happens.
I'm trading away one of them.
Yeah. It's not a question of who would you trade, but now you have to decide who would you rather
also
have?
Who has more value.
Yeah.
Right now. And I would say that Lamar probably has more value.
Yes.
Right? Like if I'm trading away these two quarterbacks, who can I get more for? You know what I'm saying? And if I can get a good piece for Lamar Jackson, I might think about doing that and just continue to start Justin Fields. Because it's not like you're giving Lamar away for free. You're getting something back.
Mm-hmm.
And Lamar is a high-end quarterback, QB1, who might not have an amazing rest of the season.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Just because of the fact that he's missing some weapons and he doesn't have much of a run game, and how much can he put on his shoulders? We're gonna see tonight. We'll see tonight. We'll see. We'll talk about this tomorrow morning when we meet at 9 a.m. Eastern time to do Tuesday's podcast, the Waiver Wire podcast live.
Mm-hmm.
But what it's gonna be interesting to see tonight how he fares. He's going up against New Orleans. Not the best defense in the world, but they're a decent defense.
Yeah.
We'll see how it works out. But I think I'm okay with it. I know in the comments, Manuel Reyes is asking, would I trade away Tua in this situation? I would. He doesn't fall in that upper echelon, but I would. I'll trade away Tua and, get some pieces back. I think Tua is a quarterback that you can trade away to get some pieces back. And I'm fine starting Justin Fields the rest of the way.
Yeah. And it's at this point, it's like time to take a look at your roster because chances are your trade deadline's coming up. You have to decide, if you want to make that final push, if suddenly Justin Fields has come on for you and he's looked like the way he has, I think that, and you said it already, but like, it is time to actually consider maybe whatever quarterback you have, especially if you ended up having like a Lamar Jackson or any of those. I don't want to say the other guys like Josh Allen and them, but those borderline quarterbacks.
All those guys are the other guys now. Justin Fields or bust.
No. It's just so awesome because like this is what I wanted for Justin Fields, and I didn't think he was going to be able to do it. That honest, the way the offense started, it looked like they weren't going to have the weapons, and then just suddenly over these past few weeks, he's just, flipped the switch and looked much better. But, Lamar Jackson, like you said, I think that's the cutoff. That's like the border where you can decide between the two. I think that's kind of the top 5 has been kind of set in stone, for the foreseeable future at this point, if Justin Fields can be playing this way, in terms of rankings, at least.
100%, man. All right, let's move on. We can talk about Justin Fields all day.
Oh yeah.
But let's move on to another Justin Jackson. And why am I talking about Justin Jackson? Because he ended up getting more carries than DeAndre Swift this week in their game against the Packers. Swift had 5 touches in this game, played like 10 snaps. All right. Not sure when this is going to be going up. Have to be honest with you. He hardly played in the second half. And this sucks, man. It's just a handful of snaps for him. Hopefully we got some reports around him improving this week. But for now, this is not the type of opportunity for a starting running back, fantasy running back. So
no,
I cannot start him next week unless something crazy happens. Can he get the opportune touchdown? Sure. But that's all he's going to get. Jamal Williams ended up with 24 carries, but no touchdowns, right? It was either 0 or 2. He got 0. Next week, he might get 2. He won't get 1. That's not happening. It's either 0 or 2. There's no way you can start DeAndre Swift right now. I understand, like, we wanted to buy low on him, right?
Yeah.
And I wanted to as well. But, like, at this point, he said it himself this past week also, and I'm not sure if we talked about it or not, but he said he's not sure. He himself said he's not sure if he's going to be 100% the rest of the year. I'm fine with him at 90. I'm cool with him at 75. Yeah. But as of right now, 10 snaps total, that's not what you want to see.
No. And with DeAndre Swift, unless we see reports on Wednesday that he's a full participant at practice, I don't think he's going to get much better in terms of fantasy production for the rest of the season until that happens. Like, until he gets, even if it's a full practice, okay, as soon as we start hearing about full practices, then I'm like, okay, then I'll warm up the idea again of putting him in a lineup. But at this point, he's not even the RB. He wasn't even the RB2 yesterday. And that's not any fault of DeAndre Swift's. We know that the talent is there. He's just banged up, and it's unfortunate that's the way it ends up being. But I've been holding on to him in my lineup a little bit, just hoping that he kind of overcomes those reports, and it's not happening. And, he came out, like you said, and said that he's not 100%. He's not sure how he's going to be down the stretch. You have to go find somebody else. I mean, unless DeAndre Swift is the only other running back on your roster, there's no reason to be starting him. The one thing that almost saved your day, if you watched, he was this close again. It looked like the exact same route that he ran the week before and scored that touchdown to save the day. He was this close to that again this week, but he didn't.
And he looked really good on that play too. He looked healthy to me.
Yeah, no, he looked fine. So I don't think there's any.
It was a nice catch too. That was a nice catch.
Yeah,
it was a nice catch too.
Him.
Yeah, it was like it was like right behind him, and he like reached back and got it like a wide receiver. Yeah.
He looked really good. I don't think there's any foul play. It's like, oh, Dan Campbell has him in the doghouse or anything like that. I think they are just kind of keeping his snaps down so he can kind of get better, but they don't want to have him off the field completely. I don't know if you're going to use him for 10 snaps, just keep him off the field. They didn't win because of DeAndre Swift yesterday.
Exactly.
And at this point, if that's going to be the case, just let him heal up. Don't have him suit up and go get hit on those snaps. Just let him get healthy. At this point, you're cutting your losses with DeAndre Swift and hoping for the best because he's missed how many weeks? He's come back. He hasn't looked very good these past 2 weeks. Just let him get healthy and then let him come back full health. But yeah, you can't start him next week with the way things are going.
And if you're worried, if you're wondering what happened to Amon-Ra St. Brown, he's still got like a 40% target share in this game. Yeah. It's just that the Lions, surprisingly, for once, of course, because they picked off Aaron Rodgers 3 times. That never happens.
Yeah.
Amon-Ra St. Brown still got 40% target share, but they didn't need to pass the ball. Jamal Williams just was carrying the ball the entire game. That was that's all they needed to do because Aaron Rodgers couldn't do anything in this game.
Yeah.
What's up with Aaron Rodgers, dude? Like, what's up? What's going on with him, dude?
It's rock
What is up
bottom.
with him?
Like, what
he
happened?
looked so frustrated on the field. Like, he was about to have a mental breakdown yesterday on that field, dude.
It's not even that he's frustrated after, 2.5, 3.5 quarters of play and you're down. On the first quarter, he's missing passes. He's like throwing his arms around. He's getting all upset. It's like, he just looks like so out of it. He doesn't even want to be on the field. It looks like he's just there at this point. And then, I don't know, you see the memes every week of him on the sideline on the phone, just like, Devontae, you got to get your ass back here. You know what I'm saying? Like, they have all those memes coming out. I don't know what's going on. He just hit rock bottom. Like, they said that he hadn't thrown multiple picks to like a divisional opponent or something like that. Some weird stat like that. They didn't throw many picks at all to divisional opponents. He was 40-1. I think that's what it was. He was 40-1 touchdown interception ratio against divisional opponents.
In the red zone.
Yeah, in the red zone. And then he threw 3 red zone interceptions yesterday. Yes. It's just like, that's the other thing. That adds insult to injury right there for Aaron Rodgers. But my worry is, he just hit rock bottom, that he's going to turn around and figure it out against my Cowboys. But we'll see. I'm not worried about that just yet.
I doubt that.
Yeah, I doubt that. Especially with the injuries piling up. Yeah.
I was just going to bring that up. I beat you Romeo Dubs, like, he has a high ankle sprain. I think that was just confirmed.
Yeah.
4 to 6 weeks, he'll be out at the very least. Christian Watson, the fantasy gods do not want Christian Watson on the field, dude.
No.
It's crazy, man. Like, the dude had a hamstring injury to start the year. He came in, looked good, dropped a pass. Remember that touchdown that he dropped? Yeah. I think it was, what was that, week 2 or 3 or whatever?
It was week 2, I think it was.
And, that's it. He was in the doghouse for a little bit. Came back last week. He came back. He started the game over Romeo Dubs. He caught a pass, looked good, right? Like, very start of the game. Got a concussion. Now, he passes the concussion protocol this week, comes back, catches 2 balls early in this game. And Romeo Dubs was, he already got hurt on his first catch of the game. Christian Watson comes in, catches 2 balls, concussion, another one early in the game. I'm like, dude, you got to be kidding me right now. So the dude cannot catch a break. All this means to me is that Allen Lazard moving forward, is the clear guy at this point, with Romeo Dubs especially out. I would say this. I think Christian Watson, assuming he's not out for like a couple of weeks with that concussion, I would say that he might have some fantasy value in the stretch run of the season. just because of the fact that every time they put him in the lineup, just for those couple plays, like he's being targeted. And I feel like they want to have him in the lineup. Their OC has even talked about him as being a guy like they want him to play because they have so much planned for him. But he just can't seem to stay on the field.
Yeah.
Hopefully he'll be all right. It does suck that he had 2 concussions 2 weeks in a row. Like that's not great. Hopefully he's all right. Hopefully it's not too bad. But we'll see what happens when he comes back. And then on top of that, Aaron Jones, he has an ankle injury too. And he was seen in a walking boot after the game. Apparently the x-rays came back fine and he could play this week. But just remember, Chuba Hubbard was also supposed to play. Right? He missed 2 weeks. Okay, so keep that in mind. If you have AJ Dillon, and Aaron Jones misses, most likely you got to play AJ Dillon.
Yeah.
Any overall thoughts on these wide receivers or running backs?
So with AJ Dillon, I would say if Aaron Jones doesn't play, you fire him up. And I know I saw in your notes you said maybe he's a RB1 play. Next week, I'd say he's an RB1 play. And obviously Dallas's defense is good, but their run defense has been atrocious. They gave up 200 yards to the Bears. So I'd say you could fire up AJ Dillon really nicely next week. If they're going to lean on anybody with Aaron Rodgers playing like he's playing, it's going to be AJ Dillon, especially if Aaron Jones is out. And then also just a comment on the Packers receivers. You want to talk about magnifying a loss as big as Devontae Adams? Have all these injuries pile up, all at once, and then see Aaron Rodgers get frustrated. It's not all on Aaron Rodgers. He's dealing with like really bad circumstances, and he's had Devontae Adams, for most of his heyday years. I'm not saying that Aaron Rodgers that he looks good and it's not on him, but, it's just a really bad series of unfortunate events all culminating at once. It's just not good,
Let's move on.
Yeah.
It sucks. Yo, Zach, our boy Baker Mayfield is back.
Woo!
After PJ Walker looked lost for an entire half. Baker came in, looked better than he's ever looked. Of course, right? Like whenever he has to play for his job, of course he's going to look a little bit better. But all of this led to DJ Moore, back to his early season woes, right? Unfortunately. But Terrace Marshall, talked about him a couple times last week, getting that full-time role now, leading to some good games for him. He caught his first career touchdown from Baker. And next week, the Panthers go up against the Falcons. Yeah. So this could be a little bait, right? If Baker Mayfield's a starter next week, right, this could be a little bait here because it's like, oh, going up against the Falcons. Oh, they must be great. So you start DJ Moore, you start Terrace Marshall, and then Baker looks like shit. And then you're like, oh, what did I do? So hopefully PJ Walker's a starter next week. That's what I'm hoping for personally. So that both these guys can do their thing. PJ Walker was lost this week. That might not be the case against the Falcons. But, Terrace Marshall, though, I actually had to start Terrace Marshall in a league yesterday, in our league that we had together. Still lost because my team sucks. They sucked they sucked on Sunday. I was on a 5-game win streak.
Yeah, I was going to say, how do you go on a 5-game win streak and then turn around and say, because my team sucks, I lost? It's like, I didn't have Christian McCaffrey. Jonathan Taylor was out.
Keenan
Allen's been screwing you all season.
Oh my God, Keenan Allen. Let's go through it. Let's go through all of it. I had Hollywood Brown. Of course, he had to get hurt as well. Yep. I also made some questionable trades that I'm second guessing now. But anyway, it's
you have Travis Etienne. You have Travis Etienne. You're fine. Don't worry about it.
That's true. But now we know what my whole roster looks like.
Yeah. With Baker Mayfield though. He did come in and look good, but it just kind of reminded me of PJ Walker coming in for Baker Mayfield against the Niners.
Back and forth.
They do nothing, and then the relief quarterback comes in and just looks like good. It's like, why wasn't this guy starting the whole game? And then they're reminded a couple weeks later after they take the job, and it's like, okay, our quarterback room isn't good. I mean, there's hope with PJ Walker. I think he should be starting, like you said, next week. I don't think Baker Mayfield should be starting.
I have one question though.
Yeah.
Where's Sam Darnold?
Yeah, I don't know. They don't want to even entertain that. They don't have enough room on their conscience.
Is Sam Darnold healthy? Can we bring him in, please?
Let's bring Sam Darnold. I don't know. I think I'm not sure how different this would be. It sucks that we didn't get to see Matt Corral, but I'm not sure how much different it would be. But he was kind of exciting. I was hoping maybe we'd see him with the way that the Panthers QB room was looking coming.
I would hope so. I hope so.
Yeah,
I'm a fan of Matt Corral, so I'm hoping that he gets some opportunity at some point.
Right.
I would say this though. I would say Terrace Marshall is in line to be a flex play next week against the Falcons, and he's a waiver wire pickup. He's available in a ton like basically every league.
Yeah.
I was just crazy enough to pick him up. I was a big fan of him coming out of school, and he was a second round pick last year. His metrics are off the charts. Have you guys? I mean, if you guys saw the touchdown that he scored, you're like, wait, who is that tight end? No, he's a wide receiver.
Yeah.
He is a
Yeah.
big dude, and he runs a 4.3 40.
Yeah.
All right, so like, let's pay attention to this guy. Okay?
And he's got a baller name, Terrace Marshall.
Terrace Marshall. That sounds like a Hall of Fame name.
Yeah.
Okay.
Did you see the sleeper banner that just came up?
No.
About
what happened?
Colts head coach?
No, what happened?
Colts are naming their former 6-time Pro Bowl center and ESPN analyst Jeff Saturday as their interim head coach.
Wow.
That one's a little out of left field.
Interesting right there. I love it. I love it.
I wasn't expecting that one. They're pulling him out of the booth. Is that what they're doing?
Hey, man, Matt Saturday, maybe he can fix some offensive line woes. Maybe he can do something there. He was their center for a long time. So that would be very interesting. I love it. Yeah, as someone who just talked about Jonathan Taylor, like I like this. I like this a lot.
I think that's an easy light of fire under the ass hiring. You know what I'm saying?
I would say so.
Because he's got roots there in Indianapolis. Exactly. He's fine. Yeah, he's got it. Good stuff.
I like it. All right. Yeah. Last thing, Terrace Marshall. And both these guys, DJ Moore and Terrace Marshall, they have a very good schedule the rest of the way. So hoping they could do something, and whatever quarterback is there can make them somewhat fantasy reliable over the last several weeks of the season.
Yeah.
I do want to ask though, did you guys sell Deontay Foreman though? Did you guys sell him, or were you guys hoping that the fantasy gods will continue this unsustainable production? Like I'm just curious. All right, that's enough. I'm sorry, guys. I'm sorry. That one might have hurt a little bit. But this was a tough matchup. Okay, and he couldn't come through for you. But Foreman also wasn't an every down back. He was taken off the field in passing situation. Chuba Hubbard is an underrated waiver wire pickup this week. Since he'll likely be the guy on the field in passing downs. Okay, this team is going to be losing a lot, and when they're down, Chuba Hubbard is going to be the one on the field, not Deontay Foreman. Okay, so keep that in mind. I'm not saying that Chuba Hubbard is going to be more fantasy relevant than Deontay Foreman. I think Deontay Foreman is still going to be doing his thing, getting the first crack at the job, and getting the first crack on early downs, being the goal line guy, that sort of thing. But how often is that going to happen? Right. I'm not saying that you need to completely get rid of Deontay Foreman at this point, but just keep in mind that Chuba Hubbard is going to be involved when he's back. I would assume he'll be back in week 10 this week coming up. So pick him up if he's available on waivers. I know a lot of people dropped him.
Yeah, but don't have your expectations too high, because just remember what this offense was. We saw the new head coach. We said it boosted the offense a little bit, but now they come back down to earth. This is what I think is going to not as bad as it was against the Bengals, because the Bengals defense is actually pretty good. It might not look that bad.
They were missing two of their top corners, though.
That's true.
And it's like, maybe we should have taken advantage of that a little bit more. Baker Mayfield did, when he came in.
Yeah, but at that point, like they don't care how many touchdowns he scores as long as it's not 6. You know what I'm saying?
It sucks because DJ Moore, like, he had a good matchup this week, with those two top corners out, and they couldn't take advantage. Even Baker Mayfield couldn't take advantage of it,
Mm-hmm. Because it's going to be a bad offense, and now you're going to have competition between, like we said, Deontay Foreman and Chuba Hubbard. So if you can if you can stomach the fact that you're going to be taking a running back that's going to be competing with another equally talented running back, I think that's kind of where I have them ranked. They're very similar, I think, in terms of their talent. If you can stomach that, then you have to get past the fact that they're on a bad offense. So it's like my expectations are very low. You might have yourself a flex starter, a couple weeks the rest of the way, but I'm not going to be relying on these guys in any facet.
Exactly. Which is why it would have been nice to have sold Deontay Foreman before this game.
Mm-hmm.
Joe Mixon, though, 22 carries for 153 yards and 4 touchdowns on the ground. And I'm not done yet. 4 catches for 58 yards and another touchdown through the air. 5 total touchdowns to single-handedly get you a win. And the reason why I am not so enthusiastic about this is because I went up against Joe Mixon in 3 leagues yesterday.
Okay. I saw the 1 league, but 3 leagues?
3 leagues going up against Joe Mixon. I actually got the W in one of them, but I had to sweat it out. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
I had to sweat it out a little bit. Juju came through for me, late, last night, with his 10 catches, and we'll talk about that in a second. But if he didn't get those 10 catches, though, that wouldn't have worked out for me. One of the best fantasy performances of all time by Joe Mixon, and he did it almost in the first half. He had 4 of those touchdowns in the first half. And I just want to say one thing. How can you predict this type of thing? Like,
you can't. I mean,
there is a way.
Yeah.
There's a way. Why wasn't he in everyone's DFS lineups every single week? I mean, he should have been, right? Because he was near the top of the league in rushing attempts inside the 5 and 10-yard line. He was leading the league in those metrics, in those stats. And he only had 2 touchdowns with those opportunities. You're always going to regress to the mean at some point. And it came in bunches on Sunday for Joe Mixon. We saw the same thing happen to A.J. Brown the week before. Touchdowns came in bunches. Why? Because according to what his opportunity looked like, it wasn't matching up with the amount of touchdowns that usually correlate to that type of opportunity. Same thing happened with Joe Mixon here. It was going to happen. We didn't know it was going to happen. 5 touchdowns is a lot of touchdowns. No one's predicting that. But a 2-touchdown game, a 3-touchdown game, that was bound to happen for Joe Mixon at some point, and it happened big time on Sunday.
Yeah, no way to predict this kind of performance, but just awesome if you have him, terrible if you don't. I mean, I know what it's like. I played against Jonathan Taylor last year when he put up the 50 points, and it just seems like they never stop getting the ball, and it seems like their offense is always on the field. In which case in the Bengals-Carolina game, the Bengals offense was always on the field. But yeah, we talk about it all the time on here. And I feel like I hammer this point home all the time. It's just, about the volume not matching production. Joe Mixon was having that for a long time. Now, we didn't obviously say that we weren't hammering home that, Joe Mixon has this upside, that these touchdowns are going to come. He's going to have a 3-touchdown game or anything like that, or anything higher than that. Obviously, a 5-touchdown game, not even on the radar. But you have to figure, like, we kind of saw this type of uptick in production coming, like you said. So maybe not this, but we saw it coming. The same thing that we've talked about with, like you said, A.J. Brown and Justin Jefferson. In a much smaller way, he ended that touchdown through the air drought. He caught a touchdown on the first drive. So
he almost had a second as well if it wasn't pass interference.
Right. So it was coming. This kind of stuff happens. A little bit more often than you might think. So just keep an eye out for those, because if you're trying to make decisions about who you're going to play, if guys are really lagging behind in terms of production, but the utilization's there, maybe let that dictate your choice a little bit.
Yeah. I agreed 100%. And, for DFS as well, like, we want to, especially when you're trying to, make a lineup that's unique, right? It's like when the opportunity is there, the player is good. You want to keep putting those guys in those DFS lineups, especially GPP tournament lineups, because you want to A, differentiate yourself, and B, the guy who recency bias is a big thing, right? And if a guy isn't DFS, doing his thing, if a guy isn't playing well, or, but he's getting the opportunity, it's hard to put them in there, especially if they haven't had those big weeks. But the guys, the DFS slate was over at within an hour and a half after, these games started, on Sunday. So very interesting. I love when this type of stuff happens, because it's literally an analytics game at the end of the day, right? Like, if you're looking at the data usually dictates how these things go, which is weird, right? It's like, nah, man, this is football. No, but if you look at the data actually does correlate the same type of way. It always regresses to the mean at some point. As somebody who relies on data a lot in his analysis and in my analysis, I'm third person right now, in my analysis and things like that, this kind of thing is kind of cool. Yeah. But anyway, moving forward, TJ Hockenson, man, received 9 targets just 5 days after being traded to the Vikings. 23% target share. The dude was on the field for 90% of snaps. He caught all 9 of his targets for 70 yards.
Yeah.
He has a chance of being very productive the rest of the way. Kind of crazy. I'm very surprised about his usage in this game.
Welcome to the top 5, TJ Hockenson. There's literally nobody else. So congratulations, you're in it. You know what I'm saying? he looked good. And it's weird. He got the usage that obviously we didn't anticipate, but this is the type of usage I was hoping for Nyheim Hines, but that didn't happen, obviously. But they traded for him. It was an intra-division trade, so that kind of maybe tells you about how much they wanted to have him on the team. And it looks like they're going to use him. Irv Smith wasn't getting that type of work at all. Now they have TJ Hockenson. It's not just a complimentary addition to this offense. He's a new weapon that looks like Kirk Cousins is going to be using every week. Hopefully this target share gets maintained, but the fact that this is happening, like you said, just 5 days after he got traded, that gives me more hope that this can be sustainable in this offense than other guys. Like, Noah Fant just went off. That's not going to be sustainable. Much different situation. And obviously Noah Fant wasn't just traded, but, this looks like much nicer production at tight end, especially with the number of tight ends that, aren't performing to expectations or what we want them to.
Yeah, Noah Fant only ran a route on 63% of dropbacks, which is not what you want. We mentioned Noah Fant on the tight end episode on Friday because the matchup. We called out the matchup. The matchup was really good, and Noah Fant ended up having a really good game. But TJ Hockenson ran a route on 86% of dropbacks. And, Justin Jefferson was obviously at 100%. Adam Thielen was at 83%, and KJ Osborne was at 88%. So, it's those 4 guys running routes. And the guys who ended up getting the targets, Justin Jefferson and TJ Hockenson. This is good for Kirk Cousins too, right? Especially with Adam Thielen kind of getting old, on the decline a little bit. And, now they have a new young target to throw the ball to. This is great for this offense, and it's great for TJ Hockenson.
Yeah, 100%. And he's a big target. Not that Adam Thielen isn't, and obviously Justin Jefferson is Justin Jefferson, but he's like a different type of target that they don't have. Irv Smith was more athletic. He was a little bit more, speedy, but he's always injured, so you can't really rely on him. So with what's his name? TJ Hockenson, you have something you haven't had in this offense. I think that showed, yesterday.
100%. Without J.D. McKissick in the Commanders' backfield this week, it turned into a 2-man committee. And Antonio Gibson, he got all the passing down work. He got every third down snap. He got every 2-minute snap. And then on top of that, he only got 2 less carries than Brian Robinson. So if McKissick is out next week, Gibson should be started as a low-end RB2. He didn't have the big production this game, but the usage was there. And if McKissick's neck issue, he's going to see a specialist, by the way, this week. So if it turns out to be serious and he's out for a few games, I'd be buying Gibson. If I need an RB2, right? If I'm desperate for a running back, he's somebody that you can buy pretty cheap right now, right? And he can kind of he's not a guy that I think has a tremendous upside. I do think he has solid week-to-week upside, but he's somebody that can kind of hold the fort down for you as an RB2, especially in PPR leagues. And this week, he wasn't peppered in the pass game. But, Minnesota has already been pretty good against running backs. They don't really allow a lot of receptions, so keep that in mind. So I don't think he's being viewed this way right now. I have good vibes on Gibson for the next week or 2 or 3 if McKissick is out. I don't think that is how the market is viewing him, especially with a low output this week. And I think that's going to help you in that regard if you're trying to buy.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I'm not expecting too much from him, but the fact that he's getting more touches and he's getting more work, over Brian Robinson. Brian Robinson doesn't look very good at all. I'm not saying that he's not a good football player. Obviously, he's on an NFL team, but it's just he doesn't look like anything that should be talented.
It's all relative. When we say a guy stinks, we're not comparing him to me.
We're
comparing him to his peers.
Yeah, and Antonio Gibson's doing what he needs to do in that backfield right now. Like I said, the expectation for me, I'm not taking him. I'm not going to expect him to be high-end RB2. I'm not expecting him to be even an RB2, but he's going to be able, like you said, hold down the fort. I think you could probably get him for almost nothing at this point. I mean, he had that good game, but go ahead.
I'll say this: is there a chance that Ron Rivera gets fired, right, at some point in the next week or 2?
Yeah,
and then Gibson's unleashed.
That
could happen.
True. Yeah. It could
happen.
That's definitely something to think about.
That's just in the range of outcomes.
Here,
right?
Yeah.
That's all.
You don't make a trade based on that happening, but it's just we were talking about Kareem Hunt possibly being traded. That kind of thing. And I'm not saying that everybody's anticipating Ron Rivera getting fired, but that kind of thing can inflate a player's value right now. You could get him right now because nobody's really thinking about that for really cheap. And if something like that would happen, you could sell on that. But obviously, it's not just all transactions that we're aiming for. You also want production for your lineup.
Exactly.
He can do that too. Yeah.
James Conner, he came back and his usage was a great sign for me. And, it looked like a lost season, to be honest with you. And you never know. Maybe he gets hurt again. But if he stays healthy, he should be all right for the rest of the year as an RB2. 71% of snaps, 70% rapid participation. Those two numbers right there, that correlates to RB1 production. That's RB1 usage right there. But since we haven't seen him stay healthy all year, I'm keeping the hope and like the expectation at RB2 levels. So if you need a running back, he's someone to buy if you have the stomach for him to potentially get hurt again, right?
Yeah.
People are tired of James Conner.
Hurt again.
People are tired of James Conner. They want nothing to do with him. So he's easy to buy as well, right? He's just somebody that you can buy. The offense will get better, right? I think as the season moves along, Hollywood coming back, that sort of thing, the offense will get better. If James Conner's healthy the rest of the year, this was a great sign for him. And this was a rib injury, right? It wasn't a lower, body injury or anything like that. Mm-hmm. He's a cheap running back you can buy. So him and Antonio Gibson, a couple cheap running backs. If I had to choose to buy one, it would be James Conner. But both these guys are two guys you could potentially buy. I'm probably going to talk about these guys on Wednesday's episode. Yeah. We'll see if I can get some more buys or not when it comes to running back position. But overall, like if you have James Conner, you don't know what to do with him. At least now you can start him.
Yeah. At this point, if I have James Conner, I'm kind of like, this is the last, chance that he has to prove himself to me. Obviously that's not what he's doing. He's not
the last straw.
His job is not to prove himself to me to his fantasy managers, but as a fantasy manager, this is his last crack. If he gets injured again, all hope is lost. Season's done. But if this workload is maintained, I think that this is the low end of what we should expect with this type of workload. His production will go up. If he get in the end zone, it's a much different story, which I think he should be able to. The offense is only going to get better, like you said. DeAndre Hopkins is still, pretty integral part. He's actually helped move the offense forward overall, not only the passing game, but the run game. Things are looking a little bit better. But with Marquise Brown coming back, the Cardinals have to get it in gear at some point. I don't think they're going to be a rollover and die team, even though they're 3-6. I think they still have a shot to make a run at playoffs, and that's all you can ask for in terms of fantasy because I'll have players playing.
Cliff Kingsbury is also playing for his job. I mean, he's coaching for his job right now.
Well, he should be. If he's not, he should be. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, 100%.
Because they've demonstrated patience with him. You know what I'm saying?
They really have. They really have. All right, let's move on to a running back who is the opposite of somebody that you're hoping does well, Derrick Henry. He now has 5 straight 100 rushing yard games, one of them being a 200-yard rushing game. He has 9 rushing touchdowns on the year through 8 games. Defenses know exactly what his offense is doing, right? Last night, they didn't need to throw the ball, and they didn't, right? Malik Willis was just there, just like the guy like hand the ball off. That's it. Like, that's his job. Like, it didn't have to be him. It could have been anybody. But, they continue to find a way to get it done with Derrick Henry. And, they're competing. They were competing with the Chiefs all night, which is so weird to me that this happened. I think they converted 1 third down all game long. They had no offensive production after the first half, but somehow, some way, they were able to stay in this game.
It's the defense.
I'll say this. I know it's not as many games as he played last year. Last year he played one more game and got hurt, but I'm going to go ahead and take the L on Derrick Henry, this year. Not somebody I want to know on my fantasy teams. He's defying all the odds, okay? It's never a good bet, in my opinion, to bet on an anomaly, but if you're going to take a bet on an anomaly, it's Derrick Henry, right? He was the bet to take, right? And that bet is working out so far. And right now he's on pace for 400 carries this season, which would be a career high for him. But him to do this at 28 years old, that is he'll be quite the anomaly. But listen, he is a different type of running back, right? If he's able to get it done like this, when every team, every defense knows exactly what they're going to do, it's special.
Yeah. Did he run I think it was like a 4.4 or something like that?
Yeah.
So when you have a 240, 250-pound running back running a 4.4, yeah, you could probably bet on a unicorn like that, maybe. I don't know. I wasn't too enchanted. I wasn't sure if he's going to be able to, to get right back to the point where, he's an auto start and a free 25 points a game, but it's looking like that's what it's going to be because, like you said, this passing offense, obviously Ryan Tannehill isn't anything special, but without Ryan Tannehill, they don't have to field wide receivers. Why don't you just put out the rest of your offensive line and just spam goal line rush for formation and let Derrick Henry do his thing. That's what I would do in Madden. So I was kind of laughing watching the game last night. When I was like, man, this is what I used to do. Like back when I was playing Madden, you just hand it to Derrick Henry and let him take it. Obviously, outside of that, there wasn't much production. If you're gonna have anybody on this offense, it's Derrick Henry. That's really all you can ask for. There's not much else to say about Derrick Henry.
No,
he's.
I just wanted
to
give him his flowers. From a fantasy perspective, just because we haven't really been talking about him. And if you guys watch our podcast and stuff before the season, we were not high on him, right? And part of the reason was because the numbers didn't look good, like his age, the amount of carries he already had. Usually running backs, take a big dip, and the foot injury didn't help either. But hey, he's the king. Put the crown on him.
Yeah,
okay?
Crown the king. The question I have just before we go on about Derrick Henry is, did anybody actually? I mean, you could say there's some Titan fans maybe, but did anyone actually expect him to just return right back the same way he was? Obviously,
oh yeah, dude. Like we got a lot of pushback.
You think?
For that? Oh yeah, we got so much pushback, bro. You should have seen my DMs. What are you talking about? This is the king we're talking about. This is Derrick Henry. He's gonna be fine. Like and I had my points. I think they were relatively valid.
Yeah,
it is what it is, man. Derrick Henry did his thing, dude. Like, it's one of those situations where you do your best analysis to kind of come up with a conclusion. These outliers are going to happen. That's why this game is fun. That's why if everything happened exactly how you thought it was going to play out, it wouldn't be fun. It wouldn't be where it's at. It wouldn't be the game we love playing. It's the randomness that makes it fun, right? You could do your best to try to determine what it is, and that's what we do as an analyst. But at the end of the day, these type of performances happen, and that's why these guys are special. That's why we love to watch. And there's not that many players more exciting to watch than Derrick Henry, especially when he gets on, when he gets a full speed, when he gets full speed in the open field and there's a safety back there, like, oh my God.
Yeah.
He's coming right at me. I got to make this tackle. Like that's something else, man.
And it's the one last thing about Derrick Henry. When you see him running, he takes such big strides. It doesn't look like he's moving that fast, but he's flying. It's hilarious.
Yeah, man. All right. So another guy who might be flying soon for the Chiefs is Kadarius Toney. He made his debut last night. He saw the first target on the first play of the game, but didn't do much after that. And I can see him being a lot more involved next week. In the meantime, Juju had 12 targets himself, caught 10 for 88. Travis Kelce caught 10 of 17 targets for 106 yards. Keep in mind that Patrick Mahomes threw the ball 68 times.
That's ridiculous.
In this game.
Anti-Titans. He was making up for what the Titans weren't doing. That was Patrick Mahomes.
Exactly. He was doing the Derrick Henry type of volume, but as a passer.
Yeah.
But Juju's, if you look at Juju's target share, it ends up coming out to 17.6%, which is literally like exactly what his target share was all year long. So it's not like his target share went up or anything with those 12 targets. Just kind of like it is what his season average was. So just kind of keep that in mind. But this is like a good opportunity. Like if you want to sell Juju right now, like I'm not advising you to, but if you wanted to, like this is a great time. He had a couple of really good performances before the bye, 12 targets in this game. Like this is pretty good because you have that potential that Kadarius Toney comes in and is a lot more involved. And I just say Mecole Hardman. Okay, if you have him on your roster, you might be able to sell him too in a package. Like he's had 4 straight good fantasy games.
Yeah.
But this is not sustainable. Like less than 50% of his routes, of routes run from weeks 4 to 6, and then 57% in week 7, then a bye, then 57% last night of route participation. He needs to be up around 80-85% at least for a wide receiver to continue to sustain this type of performance. He's basically doing Clyde Edwards-Helaire what he was doing, in the beginning of the season when he kept on scoring touchdowns. Like Mecole Hardman took that from Clyde Edwards-Helaire. That's literally what's happening with him.
Yeah.
With Kadarius Toney coming on too now, try to take advantage of some elevated value on your bench if you have him. Take advantage now. Okay, while you can.
Did anybody check under Mecole Hardman's helmet to make sure it wasn't just Clyde Edwards-Helaire wearing his jersey? You know what I'm saying? Did anybody check that? Because it's funny because you bring that up because it's just like that's exactly kind of what I was thinking. It's like he's producing even though he's not getting all the targets and the work that he should. Not they should, but that you would expect with this type of production. I think a lot of it has to do with just the Chiefs' offense being on a tear. Patrick Mahomes throwing the ball 68 times, even though he can do it, he shouldn't be doing that. every week. I don't think that's going to continue to hold up. Yeah, I think Juju, honestly, he's looking like what we wanted him to be, with Patrick Mahomes, what we kind of expected. We thought Patrick Mahomes would elevate him a little bit. Not that Juju Smith-Schuster needs to be elevated. We know he's talented.
He does.
Okay, a little bit.
I think he does.
Anybody can benefit. Even Cooper Kupp can benefit from a little sprinkle of Patrick Mahomes magic. All right.
Oh, of course, for sure.
Anybody can do with a little Patrick Mahomes magic. But Juju Smith-Schuster it took him a little while, but it seems like they're building the rapport now, and he's doing his thing. He looks good.
It's a Call of Duty. I mean, imagine how much Call of Duty they played over this bye week.
Yeah, right. That's what it must be.
How
many wins do you think they got? Like he's just continuing.
They probably killed it. I wonder how many battle royales they won.
Yeah,
over the past
what I'm saying.
week and a half. If you were stashing Isaiah Pacheco, I think the only way he gets any sort of work this season is if Jerick McKinnon gets hurt. I think CEH isn't the guy to worry about, honestly. Like McKinnon was on the field and ran 52 routes in this game. He saw 8 targets, and Pacheco and CEH combined for 39% of snaps. So Pacheco saw only 5 more snaps than CEH. I don't think he's a mustache. He's not a mustache at this point.
That's what I was going to say.
A mustache. He's not a mustache at this point. He's not a mustache right now.
Yes.
I don't think you need to hold on to him. Like, even if Clyde Edwards-Helaire gets hurt, let's say he does. I hope he does. I'm not going to would. How much more does his value increase by? Like, maybe a little bit, and he's still an RB2 at best. Low end RB2, I think, and he needs some scoring opportunities, but yeah. I don't see it. Now, if McKinnon gets banged up, I think that's when Pacheco will likely, have some value. But even then, CH and him will probably have a 50-50 split. This is a 3-man backfield right now.
It seems like Jerick McKinnon, it's obviously a pass-first offense, and Jerick McKinnon is the guy they want catching the passes there. That's why Isaiah Pacheco hasn't been doing very well. They haven't. Obviously, last night looked really bad because they threw it 68 times. No one's going to do well on 5 carries, regardless. Even if they run that one of those in for a touchdown, 2 of those in for a touchdown, it's not going to be enough to make you fantasy relevant on long-term basis because this is where the volume just is not there. If the Chiefs were just a little bit more run-based, maybe Isaiah Pacheco would have some value. But they've been throwing it. They've just been chucking around the yard the whole time. So Isaiah Pacheco is just getting the short end of the stick. It's nothing against him. It's just the workload hasn't been there.
So this is the last topic of this episode. I want to move on to Leonard Fournette, and we talked about the expected points, the expected yards, per carry, right? Like for Leonard Fournette earlier. What are we doing with him, Zach? Like I know you've been truthing for him.
Yep.
And, you haven't been worried. 3 straight games of less than 10 carries. 7 of 9 games averaging less than 3 yards per carry this year. He had 3 targets each of the last 2 games, but had 7 targets, this week to keep his fantasy value afloat in PPR leagues. But should we continue to be ranking him as an every week RB1 right now? Or is he out of that RB1 conversation at this point?
If he's going to be an RB1, it's going to be a low-end RB1. I'm not sure if I'd have him, this next week as an RB1 because they are playing Seattle and their defenses looked a little bit better. But his production, the usage hasn't been there. I know we preach usage here, but the production hasn't left you out to dry. And that's the only reason I would have him still as like maybe an RB2, high-end RB2 right now. He hasn't left you out to dry. The production has been there enough that you're not screwed putting him in your lineup, and you can continue to start him in your lineup. He just doesn't have the upside that he had before. I think he can get back to it. It's just this offense has to, get moving and find itself because it was another game where it just looked terrible. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. I mean, he hasn't looked great. It's not like what's his name is coming in. Rashad White is coming in and just like knocking the socks off everybody. Like, wow, like he should be the guy. It's not like a Tony Pollard situation where he just comes in and every every touch he gets is like going for 10 yards. That's not really the case right now. But it's more like, dude, like you just like, can you play Leonard Fournette with confidence? And at this point, okay, here are the running backs that you might want to play over him, right? Like McCaffrey, Dalvin Cook, Austin Eckler, Derrick Henry, Joe Mixon, Saquon, Alvin Kamara, Josh Jacobs, Travis Etienne. Who am I missing? Seahawks, Kenneth Walker. There's like a bunch of running backs.
Maybe
Dameon Pierce for sure.
Mm-hmm.
There's a bunch of running backs that I think that
It's going to
You wanna
shove him
start
out
over
of
him at this
RB1
point.
territory.
I
It's
think
going to
so.
shove him out. Yeah.
I think so. But he's still their guy, and hopefully their offense can improve, but it's not looking great right now. You gotta knock him down a little bit at this point.
Because Leonard Fournette's going
Okay.
to go as the Buccaneers offense goes. And the Buccaneers offense has
Yes.
been sucking, so Leonard Fournette's been sucking,
I agreed. That's really what it's coming down to. Just before we leave, any other injuries we need to talk about? Josh Allen, we mentioned his elbow injury. Aaron Jones, we mentioned the ankle injury. Deon Jackson, we mentioned his injury. I think that's about it.
Yeah.
There wasn't anything too crazy this week. So with that, thanks for listening to this podcast, guys. Appreciate you guys. If you could download, subscribe to the podcast on whatever platform you listen to, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever, downloading and subscribing would mean the world to us. We really appreciate it. You guys tuning in every day and hanging out with us. So we appreciate it, guys. We'll talk to you guys soon. We'll be back tomorrow with the Waiver Wire podcast. See you later. Bye-bye. Take it easy.